Welcome to another WandaVision recap and review. Today I'm talking about episode 6. If you haven't seen this episode yet, do not keep watching this video. Go watch it on Disney Plus and then come back here because this is a full spoiler video. You do not want any of the surprises in this episode to be spoiled. So definitely go watch it first and then come back here. Wow, this show just keeps getting better with every episode. There are some questions that are being answered, but then they also raise a lot more questions and adds a lot more levels to what's actually happening here. So it's just really crazy. This episode is a 2000s theme, so it kind of references Malcolm in the Middle and some other shows, which I didn't necessarily pick up. I know like in the opening, it's very clearly Malcolm in the Middle, especially with like the handwritten kind of zigzaggy text. But I feel like there were some other shows mixed in there. I just couldn't pinpoint them exactly. So if you know, let me know down in the comments. Or I guess I can just look it up after this. But the story is that in the Hex, it's Halloween. Wanda, her kids, and Pietro are going out to trick-or-treat. And Vision says that he's going to be going out to be neighborhood watch and make sure nothing bad happens, but really he's going out to investigate what's actually happening in the Hex and possibly try and escape. Now when this episode first started, I was a little confused because Wanda and Vision seem to be on good terms, but then Billy, who's kind of the Malcolm in this situation, looks at the camera and tells us that his parents have been fighting, but it's been weird. And so then I'm like, okay, so it's not all normal just yet. And then of course we see Vision lie to her and say that he's going to be a neighborhood watch, but he really isn't. And we find that out because while they're out trick-or-treating, Wanda runs into Herb, who tells her, no, Vision's not with us. And while Herb is like on his little radio talking to other neighborhood watch about some bad things happening, you see Pietro running around with the kids, stealing candy, knocking over jack-o'-lanterns, all this crazy stuff. And then of course, Wanda tries to play it off while all this crazy stuff's happening around her, but she tries to act like it's not anything weird. And Herb, of course, doesn't notice Pietro speeding around. One big thing about Pietro in this episode is that he seems very aware of what's going on here. He's very aware that this is something of Wanda's creation, that this world is not 100% real. I mean, it is technically real, but again, it's something that Wanda created using her powers, and he seems very aware of that. He asks very specific questions that we, the audience, have been asking. Like the big one here is, where did all these kids come from? Because before this episode, there was no other kids in the neighborhood. It was just Billy and Tommy. But now there's a whole bunch of kids. So then he asks, where did these kids come from? Were they all sleeping in their beds? And he also references things like, well, it's nice that you did this, that you had certain couples together still, or you had kids and families together. So he's very aware of what she's doing, and he even says something like, well, you did the best you could with what you had. So he's very aware that this is all Wanda's creation and that she has control over this world. So the question is this version of Quicksilver the version from the X-Men movies, Peter, or is it a new version of Quicksilver, which is kind of a combination of the Aaron Taylor Johnson version and the Evan Peters version from the X-Men movies? We don't know for sure yet, but it is still interesting. And so we also start to see Billy and Tommy getting their powers. If you're familiar with the comics, you know they become Wiccan and Speed. One has magic powers like the mom, and the other has super speed like Pietro. And we see their powers finally start to manifest in this episode. While Wanda, Pietro, and the kids are trick-or-treating, Vision is out exploring the outer edges of Westview, and you start to see parts of this reality falling apart. As he gets closer to the edge, which I feel like is actually farther away from Wanda specifically, you start to see people acting kind of robotic or even frozen. There's one woman you see constantly hanging something on a clothesline, and she's stuck in this loop, but you also see this one teardrop coming from her face. So it's like she's stuck, she's trapped. Like all these people here, they're trapped. They have no way to get out, and they're aware that they're trapped, but they can't do anything about it. So you see that, and then as you get closer to the edge where the force field is, people are just completely frozen unless Vision activates them again using his powers. He finds Agnes in a car seemingly almost trying to escape. I think that's what was happening, is she was trying to escape and then got caught somehow, and Wanda froze all of them. But Vision uses his powers on her, and she wakes up and says, "You're Vision, you're an Avenger." And then he says, "What's an Avenger?" And so again, we know that he doesn't have his memories from before everything happened here. So he's not aware of the Avengers, Thanos, any of that. But she's aware of him, of course, because she's from the outside world and she knows everything that happened leading up to this point right now. It's still kind of weird. I don't know for sure what she is exactly. And this episode, I feel like kind of threw me off. It threw a lot of people off because it didn't seem like she was Agatha Harkness. She seemed like she was a regular person because she's like, oh my gosh, we're all trapped. We can't do anything. Wanda has us here. I can't do anything. Like she felt very powerless. She seemed very powerless, and she's aware of the situation, but she didn't seem like she knew what to do about it. And then she kind of breaks out in this maniacal laughter because I guess she just knows that they're doomed. And then that's when Vision resets her and she goes back to being Agnes, the joyful neighbor. But I still don't know what exactly her role is, and maybe that was all a red herring beforehand. But it was weird seeing her driving towards the force field, so it makes me think that she was actually trying to escape, and she is aware to a degree of what's going on while she's under the spell of the hex. So Vision keeps going on, and he finds his way to the force field where he starts to exit the hex, and as he exits the hex, his body starts falling apart. Pieces of him get dragged back into the force field, so it's like he can't leave, which answers the question, if he leaves, is he still alive? Which is no, because as he was coming out, he was falling apart, and I think his body was slowly reverting back to that corpse state. But because of what Wanda does at the end of this episode, I think he lives to see another day. But it is interesting to know now that he technically does not exist outside of the hex, that he will actually fall apart, like literally fall apart if he walks out. And while that's happening, Billy can actually sense that his dad's in trouble and tells his mom. And then Pietro says, well, it's not like your husband can die twice. And she shoots him, like, without even saying anything. And I was like, ooh, okay, it's getting serious. And again, in this scene before that, you see him asking all these questions and making these statements like he's aware of everything that's going on. But then Wanda does something very crazy, which, you know what, I'll put a pin in that and come back to that at the end of the episode because it ties into the whole sword stuff. So let's go to the sword side of things. So Hayward, as we know, is a jerk, and he's ready to just kill Wanda. He believes that there's no reason for her to stay alive at this point, that she's a danger. But of course, Monica and the rest of the trio are trying to warn him against it. And then he says something that really was like, oh, you went there. He says, it's a good thing your mom died while you were gone because I don't think you would have been able to handle it. I don't think you're good for this job. And I was like, oh, we're going to go there. And I wish Monica had like punched him in the face right there because he's such a jerk. But he kicks out Jimmy, Monica, and Darcy, and of course they sneak back in. There's a really great fight scene with Monica and Jimmy against these other sword agents, and it was so awesome seeing them fight together, especially Jimmy Woo. I didn't know he had moves like that, but of course he's an FBI agent, so he probably has training. But it was nice to actually see him in a fight scene, and I really want to see more of this kind of stuff in future MCU projects. So Monica, Jimmy, and Darcy sneak back into the sword base camp, and Darcy starts hacking into the system to try and figure out what Hayward is hiding. Through her hacking, Darcy figures out that Hayward has a way to track Vision and a way to keep track of everybody that's in Westview and actually tell if they're alive or if they're stagnant, and that's how they know what's going on. But also there's some deeper secrets that they're trying to figure out, and that's why Darcy keeps digging. Then Monica gets a notification from her friend that the vehicle she asked for is ready, and they're gonna go out. Jimmy and her are gonna go back into the Hex. But what I'm not sure of, and people are saying that this possibly could be Reed Richards, but I still don't think we know for sure who it could be. Again, I didn't expect to see Evan Peters in this, so honestly, the sky's the limit here, but I don't know if we can get both X-Men Quicksilver and Reed Richards, Mr. Fantastic, in this series. If that's possible, then Phase 4 is going to be wild, but I personally don't think they're going to go that far. I mean, I could be surprised. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. Darcy tries to convince them to help Vision, but Hayward and the other agents just sit there and watch him falling apart, even though he's asking for help. He's crying for help. And as a response to this, I told you I would put a pin in this, Wanda, as a solution to this problem, uses her powers and expands the Hex. So it starts to cover more space. It starts to swallow up more of Westview, more of New Jersey, which is absolutely crazy. So we see a lot of agents trying to escape, but most of them don't make it out, and they all get turned into something. And it looked like most of the area was being turned into some sort of carnival. And ironically, all the agents were being turned into clowns, which I thought was very fitting, actually. They were doing clownery, so the clown bit back. But also, Darcy was handcuffed to a car, and they just left her there, so she also got swallowed up by the Hex. A lot of people are saying, well, if they're in the 2000s and they're going into like 2010s, then maybe she's gonna reprise some version of her character from Two Broke Girls. I don't know if they'd go that far. I feel like that'd be a little on the nose, but it would be a fun nod to that character, to that show. So we'll have to wait and see there. But now Darcy is in the Hex, so we're going to see what happens to her. And we now have more of an idea of the extent of Wanda's powers. But actually, before I end this, we need to talk about the commercial. I forgot it in the last couple videos. But the other commercials up to this point seem to be referencing a direct memory of Wanda from a previous movie. But this one didn't seem as clear. This one feels like a memory that we didn't see yet. So the commercial is this little boy is on a little island by himself, and the shark comes and brings him, I think it's like yogurt or a drink of some kind called Yo Magic. And as he's like slowly about to like dig into it, you see him start to shrivel up and just die. And like his skull is what's left. And so I personally interpreted this as, what if Wanda, after Endgame, was so distraught, so lonely, so depressed by herself, that some evil force, some evil person, the villain, came to her and said, hey, I can give you some more power so you can do this thing, so you can create your own reality and never have to worry about the real world again. But what she doesn't know is that it may be slowly draining away her life force or her magic, something. And that's what I feel like we're getting at here, because for this whole season, I am still not 100% in the camp that Wanda is in full control of this. I don't think she's in full control. And they've referenced that in this episode again, where she's like, I don't know how I did all this. I don't know why this is here. I don't know how this happened. Again, I feel like subconsciously, maybe, like Vision said, somehow she was given this extra boost of power to do this, and her subconscious took over and created this. But maybe before she knew it, this whole new reality was created, and then she realized that she did have control over it, and that's where she kind of just started playing along. But I really feel like there's this third party, this other force that's controlling things behind the scenes, and what's really causing all of this. And I feel like part of the motivation there is either to get Wanda's powers or to do something with the twins, because now they both have their powers. So maybe this evil force wants the twins and wants their powers for some other evil cause. We don't know, but I definitely think there's a lot more to the story than we know right now. I don't think it's 100% Wanda. I think there's something else going on. One last thing. I also liked the little Easter egg of seeing all the heroes in their costumes, in their Halloween costumes that were their costumes in the comics, like Pietro, Wanda, and Vision. I thought that was a really nice touch. And then also there's some other 2000s Easter eggs here and there. Like at the movie theater, for example, you see The Incredibles and some other 2000 movies there. I thought those were nice touches and really helped sell the whole 2000s theme. But I really am loving the show so far. It's really paying off. I am really excited to see where this all goes, where this all leads. The sky is the limit here. We don't know where this is all going to end up, but it's very clear that whatever does happen at the end of the season is going to be huge for the MCU, and I'm really excited to see what that is. So what did you think of WandaVision Episode 6? Let me know down in the comments. Also, don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.